So now let's get into what I call the road to the 1% of health, which is currently my big plan to make a massive transformation in the next 16 weeks, technically in the next 12 weeks, because we're already at the end of phase one. So for me, what this looks like, and I'm going to take all the principles I just talked about and show it in real, what it looks like in my program right now. So obviously, when we talk about structure, this is the structure that I currently follow. This is the first half of my week, and then this is the second half of my week. And just to quickly walk through it, I have a leg day, which is primarily for building. It focuses on knee dominant movements, so things like quads and from the squats. And then on my upper day, this is primarily a strength day with less hypertrophy, so like less muscle building focus. And then my third day, which is my active recovery day, like I mentioned, this is where I just do some cardio and I do some hip rehab work. So the cardio is still pretty intense, but it's not nearly as intense as having to do all this stuff. So what this does is it gives me a bit of an intermission between the first half of my week and the second half of my week after that. Now, in the second half of my week, it's a different lower day and a different upper day. Lower just refers to leg day, essentially. And this one is more of a glute and hamstring focused workout where we get some barbell RDLs and things like the hip thrust machine and the incline hip extensions, as well as some sled pushing because it's fun, but it's also a more functional movement and it feels great for my hip. Upper two is more of a muscle gain focus because it's at the end of the week. I have more time to recover. Initially in this program, I actually had upper two on Tuesday, but I found that I didn't recover well enough into later into the week. So it's a quick swap I made. And so again, this is where prioritizing recovery plays a big role. If you're going to do any sort of hypertrophy work, you want to make sure that, or muscle building work, which is typically more taxing on the actual muscles, you get more muscle soreness. You want to have that later in the week. And then again, on Saturday, I have another cardio and hip rehab day, except this time I do the assault bike. If you've ever done an assault bike, it's tough. So it's 3 rounds of 5 minutes. And my goal isn't to hit any time or say any distance or anything like that. It's just kind of to survive the 5 minutes for 3 rounds. But that's the basic structure of it. And this way I know what I have to do on every day. I know how to progress it from week to week, because if we're going to apply principles of progressive overload, I know how many sets I've been doing. I know that if I add one more, it'll be a bit more taxing, things of that nature. And I also know what weight increases I have on a daily basis. So the assault bike, glad you asked. So it sounds like that should be the title, but it's even more sadistic than that. Basically, it's a bike where you also have handles that you push and pull. So it's a full body bike essentially, and because it's full body and because the resistance is quite high, it's incredibly taxing on your cardiovascular system. That's a good question. I probably should have clarified that. But yeah, assault bike, basically your hands and feet are moving in tandem as you go about. So that's why it's so tough. And typically people don't do very long assault bike sessions. Some people do, but those people are crazy. People typically keep them short. One of my goals is to get to that level, but that'll take time. Now let's get into the different phases I have planned. Okay, and what this looks like in real time. Phase one, the phase I'm finishing up right now, is called Foundations, where basically the goal is to there's two goals essentially. The first goal is to build mechanical efficiency with the exercises, aka focus on form. So that's why a lot of the reason why the reps are so high is because when you do higher repetition, you effectively get more practice in the exercise that you do. So say I'm doing a squat, which is an exercise I haven't done in a while because of my hips. This is an area where I can do a higher rep range and get more practice at doing squats, because the more squats I do with good form, the better I'll be. Something I like to always say is work on the movement and the movement will work on you. So if you spend time focusing on technique over anything, the movement becomes exponentially more beneficial towards you. And then also on top of that, there's a focus on muscle gain here. A big thing I want to do is build as much muscle as possible before I get into my phase 3 and 4, which are going to be primarily strength focused, but we'll get into that in just a second. Elevation is phase 2, and this is what I'm getting into not next week, but in 2 weeks. And this is basically where a big priority is going to be on hypertrophy, so muscle gain, and also starting to dabble into strength developments. So getting into rep ranges of 6 on the lowest and up to 10 on the highest. Phase 3 is where I get full on into strength and where I bring the rep ranges even lower, down to 3 to 5 repetitions. And this is the reason why this works is the heavier weight you lift with high intensity, the stronger you will get over time, the more you do this. And also a big reason why I want to develop mechanical efficiency and build muscle is to prep for this, because it can be quite dangerous to just hop into strength right away. You're dealing with heavy weights relative to your body, and you want to make sure that you've prepared for that over the course of at least 2 months. And the last and final phase is going to be what they call a max strength phase. So this is where we're going to be absolutely pushing my limits, doing sets of 1 to 3 repetitions as low as possible to get the most amount of adaptation out of me. And because of this, because of the fact that we're changing the stimulus on the body over the course of 4 months, the goal is that I won't be plateauing in this, especially if I incorporate a deload week, which I'll get into in just a sec, in between each of these, and I give my body a rest. That way I won't ever burn out during this process, because once you burn out, it takes a while to recover from that, and you have to be much more careful. And if I'm going to hit the goals that I've set out for myself, I can't afford to have any plateaus or any burning out of any kind. Now, let's touch on nutrition. So we touched on the structure, we touched on phases. Let's get into some meals. Now, this first one, I'm going to ask for an open mind, because it's a banana smoothie on the surface, but what's in it is a bit different. And I'll preface this by saying, on paper it shouldn't taste as good as it does, but in reality it's probably one of the best banana smoothies I've had. So in this, it's a shake I make before I go to the gym. It has obviously 1 banana, it has some coconut cream, some coconut oil, some raw honey, and then also 5 raw eggs as well. And I blend that all together, and that way I get the shake. I typically like to avoid protein powders, just because if I can find a way to get all my nutrients in, even if we're going to do like a quote unquote supplementation, but if I'm going to get my nutrients in, I would always opt for whole foods. And this is a great way for me to get a ton of good protein, some good fats, ton of good fats, and some good carbohydrates in one shake. Oh, raw eggs and then raw honey. Yeah. I think raw, if I could sneak in raw onions in here and still make it taste good, that would be impressive. But yeah, this is what I have after my workouts, just because it gives me a ton of nutrients, and it also gives me a quick energy boost before I get to work. And then next up, meal 2 looks pretty much the same. It's around a pound of beef in some form with veggies, avocado, things like that. I know that I'm aiming for about 1 gram per pound of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if I'm going to do that through Whole Foods, it's going to require a lot of meat, which is why meal 3 is more or less the same. It's about a pound of beef or 2 chicken legs or something like that. But typically beef. I really like beef. And some veggies on the side to get more nutrients in. Because remember, I like to prioritize protein first, fat second, micronutrients third, and then carbohydrates at the end. I still think they're valuable. I'm not suggesting that necessarily going keto, but I don't prioritize them nearly as much as the other two, especially for recovery and performance, at least for how I like to do things. Now, when it comes to snacks, I will occasionally have a snack in the middle of the day. It'll either be in the form of fruit, cheese, or on the bottom here, this is kefir, and this is homemade. It's very simple to make. If you get your own kefir pods, I highly recommend it. It's also delicious if you were to make it into a smoothie, blend it with some berries, things like that. It's awesome. So this is typically what a day looks like for me, and this is all for the goal of getting, again, 1 gram per pound of body weight, 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein. So for me, it'll be about 190 to 200 grams of protein per day to get in my good quality fats from the avocados, from the meat, from the coconut oil and cream, things like that. And then micronutrients from the beef as well, but also the veggies like here, the zucchini, the butternut squash, cucumbers, and the assortment of veggies I have here. Then also the carbohydrates, again, from the smoothie and from the berries. I typically like to get my carbohydrates in from fruit or from sweet potato, just because sweet potato compared to white potato is a bit more nutrient dense, so a bit more bang for your buck. Now, let's get into the recovery protocol. I touched on these, but this is going to be more in depth on how I'm currently doing things. First thing is on a daily basis, getting 7 hours of sleep minimum. So currently I wake up at 5:30 to go to the gym. So getting 7 hours of sleep can be kind of tricky sometimes, especially being Greek. We like to eat a bit late. So getting that in, trying to get dinner in by 9:30 at the latest is currently the goal. But 7 hours of sleep, I know that I can recover and I feel good for the next day. Then too, it's having a wind down time at night. So one big issue I know I have is sometimes I'll want to work right until I go to sleep, but then I don't sleep well, and then I don't have a productive day the next day. So I've been being more strict with myself and setting a boundary. And as soon as I hits about 8 o'clock, 8:30, I stop all work and then start winding down for the night. I will turn off these lights. I have warm lamps around my room so that it's much nicer for me to go to sleep. Next two is stretching and doing that before and after workouts. So this is a big thing, especially if you don't want to be stiff. If you're really pushing your body to the limits, you don't want to be stiff before and after your workouts. You want to make sure you're properly warmed up. And so I find this helps me recover even better from one workout to the next because I'm not going in stiff. And then also a daily walk. This is great for the mind. It's good for the body as well to get some light movement in, especially if you're sore and tired. Getting a walk in is phenomenal. Gets the heart pumping, gets the blood going. It's a great thing. Now, I will admit I didn't go for a walk today because I've been prepping for this, but I will go tomorrow. Now, on a weekly basis, we want to incorporate days off. Okay, and for me, that's Sunday, just because I guess it works really well with the current society we live in and how things function on a weekly basis, just to have the Sunday off before Monday. But the days off is really important. You need a day where you do as little as possible so that your body can actually recover. We're not meant to be going hard 7 days per week all the time. It's a good recipe to burn out, and I'm not trying to do that, and I don't recommend it. Next is having the 2 active recovery days. Like I showed before, those are the 2 cardio and hip rehab days. For me, these have been a game changer, throwing them in the middle of my training or the middle of my week to recover better from the first half to the second half. And also have a bit of a change of pace, going in and just having to do some light hip stuff and then some cardio is quite nice, I will say. And then having a warm bath 2 times per week. So this will be sometime in the week, and on a weekday I'll do it, and then on a weekend I will get another bath in as well, just before my next week starts. These have been a game changer for recovery on many levels. Now, on a monthly basis, is to do a deload week every 3 to 4 weeks. Now, I say monthly basis, it's roughly monthly basis. And what you do with a deload week is you take the number of sets that you've been doing and you cut it in half. And when you cut it in half, the amount of damage it does to your body, and I say damage with quotations, is much, much less. And so you have less to recover from. And if you keep everything else dialed in as if nothing else has changed, then you will more than recover from your workouts, so that the next time you go to the gym for the following week, typically if you were to have a different phase 2, you would be fresh and ready to go. So for me, my deload week is next week. This week is the final push before the deload week. And then, yeah, next week I'm cutting all the sets in half. And then the following week, I start phase 2.